On the night before my wedding, while everyone else was buzzing with excitement, running around finalizing last-minute decorations and arguing over who forgot the ring tray, I felt something cold, something sharp, sitting at the edge of my chest without knowing why. My name is Emily, I was 27, and I should have been the happiest bride in the world. After all, I was about to marry the man I had loved for 6 years, David, the man who knew my coffee order by heart, who held my hand through losing my grandmother, who used to tell me that my smile was the reason his world made sense. But beneath that joy was a knot of dread I couldn't shake, and as I'd soon learn, my intuition wasn't warning me about the wedding, it was warning me about my own sister. My younger sister, Ava, had always been the kind of person people described as charming but chaotic, the kind who could sweet-talk her way out of most problems, but somehow created 10 more on the way out. I loved her. I defended her. I took the blame for her countless mistakes, because that's what older sisters do, right? Except some people take advantage of that love, and Ava wielded my loyalty like a weapon without ever admitting it. She had this habit of walking into rooms like she owned the air people breathed, and the night before my wedding, she was glowing like she was the bride. I remember watching her laugh too loudly with David at the rehearsal dinner, brushing her hair behind her ear the way she does when she wants attention, and something inside me twisted. When I confronted myself about it, I called myself crazy, jealous, paranoid. She's your sister, I whispered in the mirror as I changed into my robe that night, trying to reason with the unease. She loves you. She wouldn't cross a line like that. But lies are easier to tell yourself when the truth is too painful to imagine. The morning of the wedding, I woke up feeling like someone had placed a 100-pound brick on my chest. My phone buzzed repeatedly from the planner, my mom, my maid of honor, and then from David. But his last message wasn't a good morning or an I can't wait to marry you. It was a simple, can we talk before the ceremony, followed by 3 missed calls. My stomach dropped. Brides don't get messages like that on the morning of their wedding unless something is wrong. Deeply, horribly wrong. My mom rushed into the room telling me to hurry, but the second she saw my face, she went pale. "Sweetheart, sit down," she murmured, and the way her voice trembled made my heart pound so hard I thought I'd faint. She sat next to me, held my hand, and then said the words that detonated my entire world. "Emily, there's been a situation with David and Ava." It felt like the oxygen was sucked out of the room. For a moment, I genuinely thought I misheard her, so I just stared blankly and whispered, "What kind of situation?" But she wouldn't meet my eyes. Her voice cracked as she said, "They've been involved." Involved. Such a sanitized word for betrayal. Apparently, while I was planning centerpieces and table placements, my sister had been planning something else, sliding into the arms of the man I was about to marry. And the worst part? They weren't just having an affair. Ava was pregnant, and she was claiming it was David's. My entire body went numb. It was like the world split open under my feet and swallowed every part of me I had ever loved. I remember laughing, an ugly, broken sound, because there was no way this was happening. Not on my wedding day. Not with the 2 people I trusted most. I demanded to see David. My voice was shaking so violently I could hardly speak, but the moment he walked into the bridal suite, the guilt on his face confirmed everything. "Emily, I'm so sorry," he choked out, his hands trembling. "It was a mistake, a stupid one time." He couldn't even finish because even he didn't believe the lie he was trying to feed me. I felt like I was floating outside my body, watching someone else experience this nightmare. Ava entered moments later, placing her hand on her stomach like she was some fragile, pure angel, and the smirk she tried to hide behind a mask of fake innocence made me want to scream. I didn't mean for it to happen this way," she said softly, but her eyes glittered with something that wasn't regret. "We didn't plan it, but life happens, you know? Maybe this is how it was supposed to be." Supposed to be? She was telling me that the man I was about to marry was meant for her? On the day I was supposed to promise forever? My mom tried to stop me, but I shoved past her and demanded to know how long. How long had they been sneaking around behind my back? How long had I been the fool? Ava looked away, but David's jaw tightened, and that told me everything. Months. Maybe longer. I had been preparing vows while they were preparing excuses. I felt humiliation burn through me like fire. And then Ava dropped the final bomb, one she definitely wanted me to hear before the guests arrived. David said he'd take responsibility, she murmured dramatically, loud enough for everyone in the room. We're going to figure out how to move forward, as a family. That was it. My heart shattered into something unrecognizable. She wanted my life, my husband, my stability, all of it. And now she had a baby to use as leverage. I don't remember much after that. Just noise and crying and my maid of honor trying to keep guests away from the chaos. The wedding was canceled. The venue emptied.
People whispered.
And Ava had the audacity to walk around holding her stomach like she was some kind of miracle. David left with her. My parents followed them like they were the ones who needed comforting. And I was left alone in a white dress that wasn't meant for grief. I spent the next week curled up in bed wondering how I was supposed to move forward when my own sister had stolen everything I had built. But then something shifted, something cold, something firm. I realized Ava and David thought I'd break, that I'd disappear quietly, that I'd let them walk into the life I earned without consequence. They didn't expect me to stand up again. They didn't expect me to fight back. And they definitely didn't expect what would happen when months later, after I finally bought my dream home, the home David and I once planned together, they tried to move in. Because Ava believed that as the mother of his child, she deserved everything that used to belong to me. But what she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I had a surprise waiting for them that would flip their world upside down just like they flipped mine. In the months after the wedding disaster, my life felt like a graveyard of plans. Everything I once imagined, everything I once loved, everything I once believed in lay scattered like ruins around me, and I had to walk through those ruins alone, picking up pieces of myself I didn't even recognize. Therapy helped, work helped, silence helped, and slowly, painfully, I started rebuilding my world brick by careful brick. I stopped checking social media, stopped looking at pictures of what my life was supposed to be, and blocked anything that could drag me back into the darkness I was crawling out of. I focused on me,
My job.
my peace, my future. And somewhere in the middle of that healing, I made a decision, one that would change everything. I bought a house. Not just any house, but the house David and I had once talked about, dreamed about, planned for. The house with the white porch and the 3 big windows in the front. The house he promised we'd grow old in. It wasn't about him anymore. It wasn't about reclaiming memories or proving anything. It was about reclaiming me, my independence, my strength, my ability to build a beautiful life without needing permission from people who tried to crush me. The day I signed those papers, the real estate agent asked if I was excited. I smiled. I'm ready, I said. Not excited. Ready. There's a difference. Excited is a spark. Ready is the whole fire. I knew Ava would find out. She had a habit of stalking anything tied to me, always wanting what I had, always competing in a race I never agreed to run. And because my mother couldn't keep her mouth shut for more than 5 minutes, she found out the same week I closed. My phone buzzed with a number I didn't expect. David. I let it ring. Then again. Then again. Then Ava called. Then my mother. Then my father. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't owe them anything, not explanations, not conversations, not forgiveness. But they felt entitled to all of it. A week later, as I was painting the guest bedroom wall a soft blue, humming along to the music playing in the background, my doorbell rang. I assumed it was a delivery, but when I opened the door, I felt my stomach twist. There they were, Ava standing on my newly paved front porch, noticeably pregnant now, one hand on her belly, performing innocence like it was her full-time job. David stood behind her, looking exhausted, not meeting my eyes. And next to them, my mother and father. It looked like a family intervention, except I was the one they acted like I needed fixing. Emily, my mom said, her voice heavy with rehearsed disappointment. We need to talk. I leaned against the doorway, crossing my arms. No, we don't. Ava stepped forward, putting on her well-practiced sad face. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be, she said softly. We didn't want it to happen like this, but life happened. And now, with the baby coming, we really need your help. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Help! They burned my life to the ground and wanted me to rebuild shelter for them? And then Ava gestured toward my house, like it belonged to her. David and I have been struggling, she said with a sigh, rubbing her belly in slow circles. We can't afford a place big enough for when the baby comes. And Mom said you bought this place with the idea of family in mind. I nearly laughed. My mother stood beside her nodding, adding fuel to the delusion. Sweetheart, this house is too big for one person, she said gently, like she was doing me a favor by telling me to hand it over. You don't need all this space. But your sister does. She's having a baby. Your niece or nephew. I stared at them in disbelief. It wasn't even subtle manipulation. They genuinely believed I'd roll over and obey. My father chimed in next, arms crossed like he was the judge of a courtroom. We think it would be best if you let Ava and David stay here until they get on their feet, he said. It's the right thing to do. Family helps family. Family helps family? Where was that energy when I needed help? When I was left heartbroken, humiliated, abandoned on what was supposed to be my wedding day. When my sister stole my fiancé and my parents comforted them. When I needed support, they gave me silence. But now they expected me to open the doors to the home I built for my own healing just to enable their irresponsibility? No, I said firmly. Ava blinked like she couldn't believe I was capable of using the word. What do you mean no? She asked, genuinely confused. You have to help. You're my sister. You're right, I said. I was your sister. Until you decided sleeping with my fiancé and getting pregnant by him was something a sister should do. Ava rolled her eyes, her voice rising. Oh my God, Emily, are you seriously still on that? That was months ago. People move on. David finally spoke, voice low. We just need a place to stay for a few months. I stared at him, and something inside me hardened. You don't get to ask me for anything, I said quietly. Ava's mask slipped instantly. Her eyes narrowed. Her lips tightened. This house should have been mine anyway, she snapped before catching herself, but the words were already out. And there it was. The truth she'd been hiding behind her fake sweetness. She had wanted my life from the start. My man. My wedding. My plans. My home. All of it. She thought that if she took David and made a baby, she'd get the rest by default. But she had no idea what I knew, what I had been holding on to for months. I stepped forward slowly, meeting her glare with a calmness that made her flinch. Ava, I said, before you embarrass yourself any further, you should know something. The wind shifted. The porch fell silent. David looked up for the first time. My parents froze. What? Ava asked, voice wobbling. I felt the months of betrayal, heartbreak, humiliation, and rebuilding gather inside me like a storm. And then, with the coldest calm I'd ever felt, I said the sentence that wiped the color off her face. The baby isn't David's. The air cracked around us. Ava went still, her eyes wide, her hand dropping from her stomach as her face drained of every ounce of confidence she walked in with. David stepped forward sharply. What? He whispered. My parents' heads snapped toward Ava. And for the first time since the wedding disaster, I wasn't the one standing broken, they were. Because this wasn't speculation. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't hope. This was truth. A truth I'd been waiting for the perfect moment to reveal. And now, with all of them standing on the porch of the home they thought they could take from me, the moment had finally arrived. I crossed my arms and looked directly at Ava. Go ahead, I said softly. Tell them who the real father is. Ava's face twisted in a way I had never seen before. Fear, anger, panic, and denial all fighting for space at once, her eyes darting between me, David, and our parents like she was searching for an escape hatch that didn't exist. For the first time in her life, she didn't have a script prepared. No manipulation ready. No lie polished. And that silence, God, that silence was louder than any confession she could have made. My father stepped forward, jaw clenched, his voice low and dangerous. Ava, he said, What is your sister talking about? My mother looked like she was seconds away from fainting. David's face had gone white, his breathing shallow, his hands shaking at his sides as he stared at Ava, like she was a stranger he'd never met. And Ava just swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. She's lying. But the problem was, Ava's lies had always worked because she had confidence behind them.
She didn't have that now.
There was no arrogance, no attitude, no victim act, just frantic, cornered fear. I stepped out onto the porch, so I was standing right in front of her, keeping my voice slow, calm, and deadly steady. Really? I asked. Then explain why the DNA test your doctor requested flagged an immediate discrepancy. Explain why the timeline doesn't match. Explain why the man you've been secretly meeting for months, someone who isn't David, has been messaging you nonstop asking if you've told your family the truth yet. Ava's mouth fell open. My mother gasped. My father's brows shot up. And David staggered back like he'd been punched. What doctor? He snapped at Ava. What timeline? Ava, what the hell is she talking about? Ava began shaking her head so fast she looked dizzy. It's not what you think, she stammered, voice cracking. I let out a breath that had been sitting in my chest for months.
No, Ava.
It's exactly what they think. And then I said it, the sentence that shattered whatever illusions were left. The real father is Mark. David's eyes went wide. My father's jaw dropped. My mother choked on air. But Ava, her whole body froze, because she knew that name being spoken out loud was the death sentence she thought she'd outrun. See, what she didn't know, what she could have never predicted, was that the universe had done something I didn't even expect. It gave me closure long before this confrontation. Months before they showed up on my doorstep demanding to move in, I ran into someone who changed everything, the person who unknowingly handed me the truth Ava never intended for me to discover. His name was Mark, a coworker of Ava's. I met him by accident at a cafe near my office. He recognized me from photos Ava used to post back when we were still sisters in her mind. He asked how I was doing. I tried to keep it polite. But then he said something that made every inch of my skin go cold. Ava hasn't told her family yet, has she? I blinked. Told them what? He froze. His face strained. And then panic. Full, unmistakable panic. Nothing, he said too quickly. Forget I said anything. But the thing about people who panic is, they slip. And he slipped again when he said, I've been telling her we need to figure out how to tell the father. That single sentence wrapped itself around my brain. The father. Not David. Not the man she cheated with. Not the fiancé she stole. The father. 2 hours later, I knew everything. The affair with David lasted only a few weeks before she started something with Mark. She never told Mark about David, never told David about Mark, and when she found out she was pregnant, she realized something horrifying in her narcissistic little world. She didn't know whose baby it was. So she did what Ava always does, chose the story that benefited her the most. And that story was simple. David was stable, reliable, financially secure, and emotionally dependent on her after the chaos of the wedding fallout. Mark was fun, but he wasn't long-term material. So she told David the baby was his. Told my parents the baby was his. Told everyone the baby was his. And poor Mark, poor clueless Mark, was the one who eventually convinced her to get prenatal genetic testing done after some medical concerns. And that test revealed what Ava had tried to bury. David wasn't the father. The doctor told her. Mark told her to be honest. She refused. She wanted the life she stole from me, not the life she could realistically build. And so she hid it. Every appointment, every paper, every message.
Until now.
David stared at her with a look I had never seen from him. Not guilt, not regret, not sadness. Just betrayal so deep it made his voice break. Ava, he whispered. Is it true? She shook her head hard, her voice rising with desperation.
No.
No, David. She's lying. She's just jealous. She's trying to ruin everything. Ava, I said quietly. Mark sent me the messages. She froze. He sent me the doctor's report. My mother let out a strangled sob. My father whispered, "Ava, what have you done?" And David, he sank onto the porch step, dropping his head into his hands as tears slipped through his fingers. "I left her," he whispered. "I left Emily for you. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I ruined her life. And all this time you lied to me?" Ava turned on me like a wild animal. "This is your fault," she screamed, her voice cracking. "You were supposed to forgive me. You were supposed to move on and let me have a life. But you had to stick your nose in things that weren't your business." "Weren't my business?" I repeated, my voice low. "You destroyed my wedding.
You stole my fiancé.
You humiliated me in front of everyone I knew. And now you're standing on the doorstep of the house I bought, demanding to move in, when the entire relationship you built was a lie." Ava grabbed the porch railing like she needed support to stand. "You don't understand," she choked. "I was scared. I didn't know whose baby it was. I didn't think Mark would want it. And I didn't want to lose David. I thought if I could just get through the pregnancy, everything would settle. By stealing the man I was going to marry?"
I said.
"By stealing the life I built." "It wasn't yours," she screamed. "He chose me. He loves me." David stood up slowly, his voice hollow. "I don't love you," he said. Ava's face snapped toward him. "David, I don't think I ever did," he continued. "I think I was broken and ashamed and guilty, and you took advantage of that. You didn't save me. You manipulated me." Ava's lip trembled. She looked at our parents like they might swoop in and save her like they always did. But this time, even they stepped back from her, horror painted across their faces. And then finally, Ava broke. Her voice dropped to a whisper so small it barely existed. "Yes," she said. "It's Mark's." David closed his eyes, exhaling a shaky breath. My father covered his face. My mother whispered, "Oh my God." And me? I felt something I had been craving for months. Not revenge, not triumph. Closure. I stepped back, gripping the door handle. "You're not moving into my house," I said calmly. "You're not entitled to anything in my life. Not my home. Not my peace. Not my future. Not anymore." Ava's tears spilled over. "Emily, please." I shook my head.
"No."
"Get off my porch." And with all of them standing there, broken, shocked, and speechless, I closed the door.
Slowly.
Quietly. Finally in control. And the part they didn't know yet? The part that would make everything 100x worse for Ava? That was coming next. Because I wasn't done. Not yet. There was one more truth. One more twist. One last reveal that would destroy what little illusion Ava had left. And it was coming the next time she tried to reach out. The surprise that would flip her entire world upside down was only just beginning. For 3 full days after I slammed the door in their faces, my phone became a war zone of missed calls, guilt trips, long paragraphs, threats disguised as family concern, and dramatic voicemails from my mother begging me to stop tearing the family apart. As if I was the one who detonated the bomb. As if I didn't spend months being humiliated, betrayed, and treated like disposable collateral in Ava's endless appetite for attention. I ignored all of it. Every call, every message, every knock at my door. I was done playing the part they had written for me. The quiet, forgiving older sister who absorbed everyone's damage so they didn't have to deal with the consequences of their own behavior. I finally understood something that had taken me 27 years to learn. You don't owe loyalty to people who feed on your pain, and my family had feasted on mine long enough. But what I wasn't expecting was the message that came next, not from Ava, not from David, not from my mom or dad. From Mark, the real father, the man Ava tried to erase from her pregnancy, the man she used like a stepping stone to jump from one life to another, hoping no one would ever trace the lies back to her. He messaged me on a Wednesday afternoon while I was tightening a cabinet door in the kitchen. His text popped up like a quiet grenade. "Ava told me you exposed the truth to everyone." I wiped paint-stained fingers on my jeans and typed back. "I didn't expose anything. I simply told the truth she worked very hard to hide." He replied instantly, "I want to talk." In person. Please. I didn't want to see him. Not because I disliked him. He was actually incredibly respectful, painfully apologetic, and clearly blindsided by Ava the same way David was. But I didn't want to be dragged back into her orbit again. Even indirectly. I wanted peace. I wanted to breathe. I wanted to exist without the shadow of her chaos. But something in his message felt urgent, different, dangerous even. So I agreed to meet him. Public place, broad daylight, neutral ground. We met in a coffee shop near my new house. He looked exhausted, stressed, and more scared than I expected for someone who wasn't actually entangled in the pregnancy story anymore, at least not legally. His first words were shaky. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry for everything she did to you. I didn't know the full story until she told me you ruined her life." I snorted. "Her life?" He nodded wearily. "Ava doesn't think she's done anything wrong. She thinks you're jealous. She thinks you lied to spite her."
Typical.
Classic Ava. Narcissists rewrite reality like it's a screenplay they get final edit over. But then he leaned in, lowering his voice. "I need to tell you something. And I think you need to hear it before your parents or David or anyone else." My stomach tightened. "What?" He glanced around, his knee bouncing under the table. "Ava isn't planning on stopping," he said. "She's hanging on to the fantasy that David will forgive her and take responsibility again, even though he knows the truth. She's desperate. And when she's desperate, she escalates." I frowned. "Escalates how?" And then he told me. He pulled up his phone and handed it to me, a long thread of text messages, Ava's number at the top. I started reading and felt cold spread through my chest. Her messages weren't just manipulative, they were calculated. Demanding. Obsessed. She told Mark she needed him to keep quiet. She promised him they'd raise the baby together once things settled. Then she contradicted herself in the next message, telling him she was meant to be with David and that she needed Mark to not interfere while she fixed the situation.
Fixed.
Like she was adjusting a detail on a makeup palette. Not a pregnancy. Not a family. Not people's actual lives. But the worst message, the one that made my blood run ice cold, was the most recent one she sent him. "Emily owes me. I'll make her give us the house."
She wasn't asking.
She wasn't hoping. She was planning. She was going to try again. Harder. With new strategies. Ava always wanted everything I had. My childhood room. My clothes. My friends. My attention. My opportunities. My fiancé. And now she wanted my home. She wanted the life she stole to stay stolen. Mark swallowed hard, whispering, "You need to be careful. She's not thinking clearly." I took a deep breath. She never thinks clearly.
"No," he said.
"This is worse. She's not just being impulsive. She's obsessed with proving she can take from you and win." And then he said something I hadn't expected. "She's angry you found out the baby isn't David's. She wanted you to stay broken. She wanted you small. She wanted you embarrassed forever." My vision blurred with heat, not from sadness, but from a rage so controlled it felt like my bones were buzzing. "She won't get anything from me," I said. "Not now. Not ever." Mark nodded firmly.
"Good.
Because there's more." My heart dropped. "More?" He hesitated, then slid a folded paper across the table. "A letter," he said. "From your father." My eyes narrowed. "Why would my father give you a letter?" "He didn't give it to me," Mark said quietly. "He dropped it in Ava's bag last night when they went to your parents' house. She forgot it in my truck when she came to yell at me. I read it because she told me she had proof your parents were on her side." I unfolded the paper slowly, bracing myself. It wasn't a letter. It was a plan. My father, my own father, had written down a list of options for how they could approach Emily about the house. Options that ranged from emotional manipulation to backhanded guilt trips to reminding her that this home was always meant to be a family property. Family property. As if my money didn't buy every inch of it. As if their betrayal didn't burn every bridge between us. As if I owed them after everything they let happen. At the bottom of the page, in my father's messy handwriting, was the line that made my entire body go cold. If she refuses, we will talk to a lawyer. She is emotionally unstable after the wedding. That may help our case. They were planning to declare me unstable to try to take my own house, my own parents, my own flesh and blood, standing behind the daughter who destroyed my life, trying to destroy whatever pieces I had left. I felt everything inside me go still. Not weak, not scared, still like steel. I folded the paper carefully and placed it back on the table. Mark watched me nervously. "Are you okay?" he asked. I nodded. "I'm better than okay," I whispered. "I know exactly what to do now." Because I had one more surprise. One last twist. Something none of them, Ava, my parents, not even David, knew. Something that made their entire plan useless before they even started. Something I had prepared quietly, months ago, the moment I bought the house and realized I could never trust my family with anything ever again. And when they came back for round 2, when they returned thinking they could bully, manipulate, or threaten their way into my life again, that was when I would drop the final truth. The one that would end this battle forever. Ava wanted war. She had no idea I had already won, that I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared, because I was done being scared. For the first time since all of this started, something inside me felt steady, like every piece of chaos finally lined up into a single, sharp line pointing toward one unavoidable truth. My sister wasn't going to stop unless I stopped her. Not with words. Not with family meetings. Not with boundaries she always ignored. She wanted my husband, my life, my home, and she believed she was entitled to all of it because she'd grown up thinking she was the chosen one, the golden daughter, the one who could do no wrong. But that night, as I sat at the kitchen table in our new house with the lights off and the moon reflecting on the marble countertops we worked years to afford, I realized something else. She didn't expect resistance. She expected surrender. She expected me to crumble the way I used to when we were kids, and she'd steal my clothes, my friends, my space. She expected tears, pleading weakness. But this time, she was going to face someone she'd never met before. The version of me who learned how to survive without family approval, without validation, without anyone's protection. And the next morning proved that she was dangerously unprepared for that person. That I woke up early, made coffee, opened the blinds, and calmly waited for the next explosion I knew she'd bring. And she did, faster than I expected. My phone lit up at exactly 7:13 a.m. with her name, and before I could even swipe, another call came, then a third. Then a voicemail. Then a text that read, "We're coming. You can't stop me. This baby is part of that house too." I didn't even blink. I didn't panic, that I didn't even reply. I simply put my phone face down and walked outside onto the porch, letting the cold morning air hit my face as if it were wiping away the last pieces of fear. My husband, Mark, eventually came looking for me, hair messy, eyes tired, voice soft. "She called me too," he said quietly. "She's unhinged." I turned to him, studying the man who had been dragged into a nightmare he never asked for. And yet he still stood by me, still defended me, still loved me without wavering despite the circus my sister was trying to build around us. "Let her come," I told him. "It's time she learns this house isn't hers." He didn't understand at first, but when he saw the certainty in my face, he nodded slowly. "I trust you," he whispered. And that was all I needed. At 8:04 a.m., we heard the sound of a car engine rumbling aggressively up the driveway. She didn't come alone. Of course she didn't. Her boyfriend, some guy she barely knew, was driving. She stepped out of the car like she owned the place, rubbing her belly dramatically as if that alone gave her authority. She didn't even look at me at first. She walked straight toward the front door with her suitcase rolling behind her and announced loudly, "Move." I'm not standing outside all day. I didn't move. I stood in the doorway like a wall. "You're not entering this house," I said calmly, voice level, heart steady. She scoffed, loud and exaggerated. "You can't legally keep me out of a marital asset," she hissed. "My baby is Mark's family, whether you like it or not." Mark actually laughed, not a cruel laugh, but the laugh of someone finally fed up with insanity. "Your baby isn't mine," he said. "It never was. Stop using that lie." She rolled her eyes. "You don't get it. This baby needs a stable home, our home. You're the unstable one. You destroyed the wedding. You ruined everything. Now you're trying to push out a pregnant woman? The world will hate you for this." I stared at her, emotions gone. Only truth left. "You tried to sleep with my husband," I said. "You lied about being pregnant with his child. You stalked us. You stole from me. You manipulated our parents. And now you think a new house comes with a free pass." She smirked in that same twisted, entitled way I had grown up with. "It's not manipulation," she whispered. "It's consequences." But what she didn't know, what made the moment almost poetic, was that consequences were finally coming for her.
Not from me.
From her own choices. "You want to move into this house?" I said, stepping aside just enough to reveal what was waiting behind me. Her face shifted instantly, from arrogance to confusion to horror in a matter of seconds. Because sitting at the kitchen table inside the house were two people she thought she could always control, my parents. Except they weren't smiling. They weren't defending her. They weren't calling me dramatic or jealous. They were sitting stiff, pale, eyes bloodshot from the truth they had learned just hours earlier. Truth I had evidence for. Truth they couldn't deny anymore. My mother looked at her and said quietly, "She showed us everything." My father rubbed his temples, exhausted. "All the messages. All the recordings. All the screenshots. Everything you've done." My sister froze. For the first time in her life, she looked like a child facing a punishment she didn't know how to escape. "What?" she stammered. "You believe her over me? I'm your daughter. Your real daughter." My mother flinched at the word real. My father's jaw tightened. "We believed you for years," he said. "And we were wrong for doing that. You crossed a line this time." She began shaking her head violently, eyes darting from me to Mark to our parents, searching for someone, anyone, to worship her the way she was used to. But no one did. Not anymore. "You showed them," she finally whispered to me. I nodded once. "Every lie you've told. Every trap you tried to set. Every attempt you made to sabotage my wedding and steal my husband." She clenched her teeth, so hard I thought they'd crack. "You think exposing me will stop me?" she hissed. And then the boyfriend she arrived with visibly took a step away from her, muttering, "Hell no, I'm not getting involved in this." His expression said everything. Even he didn't want to touch the delusion she was drowning in. My sister snapped. Not loudly. Not in a dramatic screaming way. She snapped quietly, the way a person does when reality finally corners them. "Fine," she whispered. "If none of you will help me, I'll make you regret it." She marched toward the house again, but I stepped in front of her once more. "Try it," I said softly, "and I'll have a restraining order in place before the sun sets." She froze, because she knew I meant it, and she knew I had more than enough proof to get one. My father stood then, walked to the doorway, and looked her directly in the eyes. "Go home," he said, "and get help." She laughed, short, cracked, broken, and for the first time in my life, I realized she wasn't powerful. She was pitiful. Then she turned around, stormed to the car, and slammed the door so hard the windows shook. And just before the engine started, she rolled down the window, stared at me with eyes full of venom and whispered, "This isn't over." But she was wrong. It was after she drove off that morning, after the dust settled on the driveway and the thrum of her engine finally disappeared down the road. The world didn't go quiet the way I expected. It went heavy, like the house itself inhaled and refused to exhale. Even my parents sat frozen at the kitchen table, unsure whether to speak or leave or apologize or pretend none of this had happened. Mark didn't sit. He paced, silent at first, then rubbing his jaw, then shaking his head at the entire situation like he still couldn't believe the level of madness we had been pulled into.
But me?
I wasn't pacing. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was simply still. Because when someone like my sister says this isn't over, it doesn't sound like a threat. It sounds like a promise she fully believes she has the power to keep. Which meant she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. And I knew we needed to prepare for the next wave before it swallowed us whole. My parents finally spoke first. My mother's voice trembled, not with fear, but with guilt. "We failed you," she whispered, eyes fixed on her hands. "We let her hurt you for years, and we didn't stop it." My father exhaled in a way I'd never heard before, broken, human, not the strict father we grew up with. "We believed her lies because it was easier than admitting we raised her wrong," he said plainly. "But that ends now." I listened, but I wasn't ready to soften. Forgiveness wasn't a handshake. It was a slow, painful process that needed time I wasn't ready to give. "You can't fix years overnight," I told them calmly. "But thank you for believing me now." It was the most I could offer in the moment. And it was enough. They nodded quietly. Mark finally stopped pacing and came to stand beside me. "Whatever she does next," he said, "we deal with it together." He meant it. I felt it. And that gave me enough strength to take the next step I knew was necessary. I picked up my phone and called the one person who had been waiting for my signal for weeks, our attorney. Because what my sister didn't understand was that chaos didn't scare me anymore. Her manipulation didn't scare me. Her delusions didn't scare me. But what she might do next absolutely required a wall of protection higher than anything I'd ever needed before. So I told the attorney everything. I sent him every screenshot, every recording, every message, every threat, every attempt she made to break into my life. And when I was done, he said calmly, "We'll file immediately." Restraining order, cease and desist, and official documentation of harassment and attempted fraud. It was the first time in months I felt the floor stabilize under my feet. But my sister didn't wait days to retaliate. She didn't even wait hours. She struck the same afternoon, because of course she did. People like her don't pause. They escalate. It started with phone calls from extended family. Aunts. Cousins. People who barely knew our lives but loved drama like oxygen. The messages came in fast, dripping with accusations. "Why are you kicking out your pregnant sister?" "She told us you're mentally unwell." "She said Mark cheated, and you're covering it up." "Family protects family. Why are you dividing us?" I read each one with a strange detached calm, like I was watching the final act of a play I'd already memorized. Mark took my phone at one point and said, "Don't answer any of them. She's trying to isolate you again." He was right. So I blocked every number. Then came the social media warfare. First, she posted a tearful, heavily filtered video of herself crying on Instagram, hand on her belly, trembling voice, talking about being abandoned by her only sister during pregnancy while the father of her baby was being manipulated and stolen. Then she posted a picture of our house. Yes, our house, writing, "This was supposed to be my baby's safe home, but jealousy ruined everything." Comments poured in. Sympathy, outrage, people yelling at me without even knowing my name. She made me the villain in a movie she wrote, directed, and starred in. Mark saw the posts and slammed his fist into the counter, not at me, but out of sheer disbelief. "She's insane," he muttered. "She's actually insane." My parents were mortified. My father grabbed his coat and said, "I'm going to talk to her." I stopped him. "No," I said. "She'll twist it and claim you threatened her." My mother gasped softly because she knew it was exactly the kind of lie my sister would weaponize. But the real storm hit when she called the police. Yes, the police. At exactly 5:42 p.m., 2 officers pulled into our driveway. Calm, professional, polite, but clearly responding to something serious. When I opened the door, one officer said, "Ma'am, we received a report that a pregnant woman was forcibly removed from this property and denied access to her residence." Even though I expected it, because nothing she did could surprise me anymore, I still felt a cold rush move through my body. She had officially crossed from drama into legal manipulation. My parents came forward immediately, explaining everything. Mark showed the officers screenshots, messages, proof she didn't live here and never had. The officers were patient, respectful, and eventually said, We just needed to confirm. You all are fine. But before leaving, one officer said quietly, she mentioned she may come back to retrieve belongings. If she does, call us immediately. Don't open the door. That sentence alone proved one thing. They already sensed she was volatile. That night, we reinforced the locks, installed cameras, and placed motion sensors around the property. Not because we were paranoid, because we were finally acknowledging the reality of someone who believed she was entitled to ruin us. And when it got dark, when the house quieted and my parents went home, and Mark finally fell asleep beside me, I lay awake listening to the soft hum of the security system. And somewhere deep down, a thought whispered, she's not done. She's planning something bigger. I was right. At 2:17 a.m., I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. Not calls. Notifications. My sister had posted again, this time tagging Mark's workplace, tagging relatives, tagging random community pages. She made a long, dramatic accusation claiming Mark was emotionally abusive, cheating, controlling, and that I was mentally unstable and violent. She even attached a photo of herself crying in a hospital waiting room, one I recognized from months ago when she had gone in for dehydration, not pregnancy issues. She twisted every piece of her past into a weapon for the present. And, because the internet loves a tragedy, her posts were already blowing up. Mark woke up to the noise and saw everything. She's destroying our reputation, he whispered. This could affect my job. His voice cracked in a way I had never heard before, not fear, but frustration mixed with exhaustion. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't about jealousy or attention or obsession. It was about control. She wanted to break us apart by force since manipulation failed. She wanted us cornered, overwhelmed, drowning in public humiliation until we gave in and let her move in, just to stop the chaos. But she underestimated us again. Because while she was losing herself in a spiral of lies, we had something she would never have: evidence, stability, unity, and professionals ready to shut her down. By sunrise, our attorney had already drafted the restraining order. By noon, the paperwork was filed. By evening, we had timestamps, screenshots, statements, and officer reports prepared for court. And just when I thought the day couldn't get heavier, just when I thought I had mentally prepared for every trick she could possibly pull, there was a knock at the door.
Soft.
Slow. Repetitive. A woman's voice whispered through the wood. Please, I need help. It's me. It was her. And she wasn't alone. Her voice sounded shattered, not angry, not entitled, not dramatic. Something was different. Something was wrong. And when I finally opened the door just enough to see her face, my entire world tilted. When I cracked the door just an inch, the porch light washed over her face, and for the first time in my entire life, she didn't look smug, manipulative, or victorious. She looked terrified. Not the performative, Instagram-filtered sad girl fear she weaponized online. This was different.
Real. Raw.
Her hair was messy, her eyes swollen from crying, her lips trembling like she'd been standing outside replaying a nightmare she didn't know how to escape. And just behind her, partly hidden in the shadows, stood another figure, a woman I had never seen before. Older.
Stern. Cold.
Watching her closely, like she didn't trust her to move freely. My hand tightened around the door. What do you want? I asked, not rude, just guarded. My sister didn't answer immediately. She looked over her shoulder at the stranger, then back at me, then at the ground, wiping her face with the back of her hand like she was trying to erase her own emotions. I need to come in, she whispered. Please. I need help. Every instinct in my body screamed no. Every memory of every lie she told, every stunt she pulled, every manipulation she crafted was clawing at me like a warning. But before I could shut the door, the woman behind her stepped forward and extended a card, simple white, embossed lettering. I'm Detective Foster, she said. Your sister came to the station tonight asking for assistance. She insisted she needed to speak with you. A detective. Not an officer responding to a call. Not someone doing a welfare check. A detective. That meant something serious was in play. My heart thudded once. Hard, because suddenly the situation wasn't about lies or drama or manipulation. It was about something larger. Something that pulled the ground out from under all of us. Did I open the door a little wider? Not enough to invite them in. Just enough so I could meet the detective's eyes. "What's going on?" I asked. My sister's breathing hitched. She reached forward like she wanted to grip my arm, but stopped herself, fingers curling into a fist. "They're looking for him," she whispered. "For my boyfriend. They think he's involved in something. Something bad." The detective cleared her throat softly. "Your sister reported that the man she's been living with disappeared after making threats. She expressed concern for her safety and yours." Her concern for my safety? The irony nearly made me choke. Except the fear in her eyes wasn't fake. Even after a lifetime of her acting, pretending, forcing herself into center stage drama, this wasn't a performance. She was genuinely afraid. Mark came down the stairs then, half awake, eyes narrowing the second he saw her. "What is she doing here?" he asked, voice sharp. The detective turned toward him. "Sir, we're trying to determine the whereabouts of a suspect your sister had contact with. He has a history of violence, fraud, and coercion. She mentioned he threatened to make all of you pay if she didn't give him money." Money.
Fraud. Threats.
Suddenly pieces of her past months snapped together like broken glass, forming a picture I had ignored. Her rushing into a relationship, moving too fast, the secrecy, the late-night calls, the makeup she used to hide bruises she claimed were her own clumsiness. For the first time, I saw her not as the villain, but as someone who had been preyed on by a worse predator. She looked at me then, tears streaming. "I didn't know what he was doing," she whispered. "I didn't know he stole your card. I didn't know he hacked your email. I didn't know he called the cops pretending to be me. He said it would teach you a lesson. He said you deserved to suffer." Her voice cracked completely. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Silence fell between us like a heavy curtain. And for a moment, I didn't know what to feel. Anger, betrayal, exhaustion, but also an unexpected stab of pity. Because as much as I hated the chaos she caused, the lies she fabricated, the hell she put us through, she wasn't safe. And maybe, somewhere buried deep under all her cruelty, she wasn't as invincible as she pretended to be. Still, I didn't step aside. "You can't stay here," I said quietly. "Not after everything you've done." She nodded, almost relieved that I didn't sugarcoat it. "I know," she whispered. "I'm not asking to stay. She stopped, breath shaking. "I just didn't know where else to go while they look for him." The detective stepped forward again. "We're placing her in protective hold at the station until we resolve this. She just insisted on seeing you before she went. Before she went. Before she disappeared into a police car. Before she became a witness in something far darker than family drama." I stepped fully outside, shutting the door behind me. For the first time in years, it was just the two of us, no parents, no husband, no audience, no lies to perform for. My sister looked so small in that moment, smaller than I'd ever seen her. "Did you lie about being pregnant?" I asked quietly. She nodded, ashamed. "Yes." "Did you try to steal Mark?" Another nod. "Yes." "Did you post all those things about us online?" She winced, then whispered, "Yes." "Did you call the police on us?" "Yes." "I'm sorry." I panicked. He said if I didn't ruin you, he would ruin both of us. My stomach twisted. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her voice rose into a broken whisper. "Because you always win. And I never do. And he made me believe you were the enemy. He made me believe hurting you was the only way to save myself." She reached out her hand then, not to take, not to demand, but simply to touch my arm like a drowning person reaching for anything solid. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "I know I don't deserve it. I just needed you to know the truth before the rest of this explodes." I didn't take her hand. I wasn't ready, but I didn't pull away either. "Fix what you broke," I said. "Tell the truth online. Clear Mark's name. Clear mine. Tell the family. Undo what you can before it's too late." She nodded quickly. "I will. I swear." The detective gently took her elbow. We need to go. My sister hesitated and looked back at me one last time. Thank you for opening the door, she whispered. As they walked down the driveway, her silhouette looked nothing like the villain I had been fighting. She looked like someone who had been devoured by the very monster she tried to sick on me. The police car door shut, the engine started, and she was gone. Inside the house, Mark looked at me with a mix of concern and relief. Are you okay? He asked. I closed the door fully and locked it. I don't know, I admitted. But I think it finally is over now. Except it wasn't. Not fully. Because later that night, as Mark slept and I sat alone in the living room trying to process everything, my phone buzzed with a notification. A message request. From her boyfriend. No words. Just a single image. A photo of our house taken from the woods across the street. And beneath it, a message. Your sister told me everything. Now I'm coming for you. That's when I realized. This story wasn't ending. It was only entering its final stage.